The inviolate loomed, red and jagged, a thin cyan line bleeding down its spine. The gray frigate clung like a parasite. Inside, red lights pulsed. The shuttle ramp moaned open, revealing a lone figure with a black bag.
So this is the doctor. Brave or stupid, walking onto my ship alone.
They never expected the prey to bring its own teeth.
The guards tensed. They'd seen prisoners weep. This one just tilted his head, measuring a blunt instrument. 2 weeks earlier, in a detention cell, Walsh faced Chief Medic Zek, bruised, stripped, and calm.
You'll learn our pod systems. Prepare prisoners. Your fragile minds can't handle our methods.
And if I refuse,
Then we'll extract it from your corpse. Sign the certification. Pod permissions. Meaningless. But protocol.
Now, stepping aboard, Walsh heard Zek's laughter echo and allowed himself a thin smile. The guard pushed Walsh deeper into the ship, past rows of empty stasis pods. A terminal node blinked in a recessed bay.
Junction 4C. Camera blind spot at the third bulkhead. 15 minutes between patrols.
The medical bay smelled of antiseptic and alien blood. A young pilot lay on a surgical bed, his chest a mess of fractured ribs.
Breathe easy. I'll have you on your feet soon.
The guard stood motionless at the door, but Walsh felt the weight of that slit pupil stare, tracking every motion.
4 meters to the left of this bed. A pod terminal. I'll reach it during the supply run.
He finished the procedure and moved to the supply cabinet, mere inches from the terminal. The guard took a step forward.
Suspicion already. Time to deflect. Quarantine protocol. Any terminal near a surgical patient requires sterilization. Old rule. You don't want a ship-wide outbreak.
The guard hesitated, then grunted. Walsh's fingers traced the terminal's frame, not the screen, reading the access port without touching it. In the officer's ward, they left him alone for 12 minutes. Protocol for treating the restrained ones.
Junction 7B. Terminal hidden behind the diagnostic panel. This is my window.
He peeled back the panel, inserted a slim tool from his bag, and interfaced with the pod registry. A single pod, 3 decks down. He inverted the seizure regulation setting and held his breath.
No alarm. The system accepted the config change as a routine calibration.
In the primary medical bay, a junior Corthan medic stared at a blinking log entry.
Chief Medic Zek. Pod dosse ge reported a parameter shift. Should we glitch? Those pods have false readings every cycle. Don't waste my time.
Zek turned away, and the junior medic logged the anomaly as a sensor error.
Arrogance is a predictable flaw. They never check the fine print.
Over the next hours, Walsh moved from terminal to terminal. Each fake task bought him precious seconds. He pulled up a ship schematic. Pod indicators flickered amber in sequence, decks falling one by one.
3 more banks, and the whole ship runs inverted. None of them will feel a thing.
On deck 9, Lieutenant Korath felt his limbs turn to lead. A pre-seizure wave washed over him. His body knew the drill. Seizure regulation. He staggered into the nearest pod and sealed the hatch. The stasis field pulsed inverted. Instead of stabilization, it forced his brain into deep suppression. Korath went rigid, then limp. The biomonitor showed a false calm, deep coma, no distress. In the medical bay, Walsh checked his hidden monitor. One pod feed had gone dark.
The first, they'll blame the hardware. By the time they connect the dots, I'll be long gone.
On the bridge, Captain Vakor ordered a course adjustment. He still believed the ship was invincible. The sensor operator called out. 7 pods on deck 9 had entered unscheduled stasis cycles.
Unstable power grid. Run a diagnostic and stop wasting my time with false alarms.
The diagnostic returned a cluster of locked pods, spreading across 2 sections. A low-grade alert pulsed on the bridge. Security teams fanned through the corridors. At a junction, Walsh was intercepted. A Corthan security officer demanded his movement log and purpose. Walsh's face remained blank.
Medical supply restock. I am treating your injured prisoners, same as I've done all day.
He transmitted a precompiled medical report, every pod vital within calibrated parameters.
The pods register coma as stable sleep. Their own protocols hide my tampering.
The security chief scanned the data, grunted, and stepped aside. Walsh walked on. On the bridge, Vakor received the all-clear, a software glitch, but his tail twitched against the deck plates. In main engineering, Chief Engineer Thule traced the pod anomalies to a single access pattern, deliberate, precise, and still active. A priority line to the bridge cracked. Sabotage. 1 terminal. Lock down the medical bay and secure the human. The medical bay hatch slammed shut, bolts engaging. Walsh heard the lock cycle and set down his bag.
And now I am a suspect. Just as planned. Time for the backup.
A hidden interface. Stripped from a decommissioned pod, powered on, Walsh tapped in commands.
2 more banks, decks 5 and 4. Once they flip, the cascade is irreversible.
In engineering, Thule felt a familiar pressure behind his eyes, pre-seizure aura. He'd been in a pod hours ago. He tried to call out the terminal location, but his voice locked mid-word. Then his legs buckled. Walsh watched a monitor flicker, the engineer's vitals flatline into coma. The investigation line went silent.
2/3 inverted. Their ship is becoming their tomb, and they still don't see it.
Captain Vakor stared at the status board. Pod failures were spreading across 3 decks. His chief engineer had gone silent.
All non-essential personnel enter stasis pods immediately. Preemptive seizure regulation. We will ride out this malfunction.
The deck plates vibrated as Corthan crew members filed toward the pod banks, orderly but hurried. An officer paused at a pod hatch, fingers tracing the seal, then climbed inside without hesitation.
He's ordering them into the trap. Every Corthan who listens is handing me the ship. They think they're preserving their crew. They're just filling more tombs.
Pod hatches sealed in sequence, the stasis fields humming. The ship's corridors grew quieter. On the bridge, Vakor watched the personnel count plummet. He believed every pod was a shelter, not a crypt. On Walsh's hidden display, the amber icons flipped to black. One by one, the crew vanished into comas.
Once the engineers trace the fault, we'll wake them. No human can outthink Corthan redundancy.
The status board lit red. Deck 7, complete operational silence. No life signs except pods in coma cycle.
Seal all sections. No one else enters a pod. Find me that human and bring him here, alive.
In the sealed medical bay, Walsh folded his portable terminal and closed the black bag. The ship-wide intercom crackled with Vakor's orders.
They still don't know about the prisoners. Block C is isolated. That's my exit.
Outside, 4 Corthan security officers rounded the corner at a run, then stumbled. Seizure auras rippled through them. One by one they dropped, armor clattering against the deck plates. Their pod exposure had already crossed the threshold.
Convenient. Even their security teams were using the pods.
He moved through dimmed corridors. The ship's heartbeat was replaced by the hum of locked pod hatches. He passed a junction where a single Corthan officer leaned against the wall, eyes flickering, trying to raise a weapon.
Don't fight it. You'll just strain a vessel.
He reached the prisoner block, a sealed hatch with a standard Corthan lock. Walsh pulled out a decryption card he'd prepared. The lock yielded. Inside, 5 human pilots sat in filth, wrists raw. They stared at him, uncomprehending.
Get up. We're walking out of here. Stay close and don't touch anything.
One pilot, gaunt but sharp, grabbed a fallen guard's sidearm. Walsh shook his head.
Number. We're not fighters. We're patients. And they signed the release.
On the bridge, Vakor rewound security footage. Walsh at a terminal, fingers moving with deliberate calm. The pieces collided.
It was him. The pods. He didn't poison the air. He turned our own systems against us.
He slammed the alarm, broadcasting a ship-wide alert. But the screen flickered as his first officer collapsed, mid-word. Vakor's own limbs felt heavy, the pre-Caesar pressure building. He locked onto a console.
He's already won, unless I lock down the shuttle bay. Last card.
Vakor's claw stabbed the system lockdown. Red bolts sealed every shuttle bay hatch across the ship. In the corridor, Walsh and the prisoners heard the distant clang of locking mechanisms. The path to the bay snapped shut.
He's still fighting, of course, but he's too slow.
Walsh turned to a wall terminal, fingers flying. He keyed in Vakor's command, override, memorized during his medical access. On the bridge, Vakor's console screamed a system alert. Command override accepted. Authorization Vakor 7X.
Number. He has my codes. How?
The answer hit him like a blade. The medical certification. Zek's protocols. He'd given the human everything. Vakor's vision swam. The pre-seizure cascade overwhelmed him. He slumped forward, oblivious. The corridor lights shifted from red to cyan. Latches disengaged. The shuttle bay doors slid open. Walsh led the pilots into the bay. The medical shuttle sat waiting. Its engine glow the only steady light. The shuttle ramp sealed with a soft hiss. Walsh slid into the pilot's seat, and the freed men strapped themselves in behind him. Engines flared a steady blue. The shuttle lifted from the dark bay and punched through the containment field into open space. 3 Corthan cruisers dropped from warp ahead, their weapons ports glowing hot. A priority channel crackled to life.
Corthan Fleet, this is Dr. Walsh. I am returning recovered prisoners under medical authority clearance. The document is transmitting now.
On the lead cruiser's bridge, a holographic certification bloomed. Corthan medical seal, Chief Medic Zek's signature, and a line, full pod operation privileges. Bear is certified to operate all biostasis pod systems aboard the Inviolate. No override permitted. The Corthan commander's orders stalled mid-command. The doctrine he'd ignored for years now shielded the human he hunted. The cruiser's weapon banks dimmed. A single word crossed the channel. Proceed. The shuttle's course cleared.
Signed, sealed, and weaponized. They handed me the key and called it meaningless.
Behind them, the Inviolate drifted, its cyan line glowing like a signature written in ice. The fleet could only watch. The document that froze a Corthan fleet had been signed in a dirty detention cell, under duress, mockery, and fluorescent glare.
This certification gives you pod access. Our doctrine requires it for prisoner medical assistance, but you'll never touch a terminal anyway.
What exactly does it allow?
Full pod operation privileges. Calibration. Stasis inversion. Even command overrides. Meaningless for a human. You don't have the physiology to trigger the systems.
Walsh thumbed the pad, signed his name. The system registered his biometrics without protest. Certification 7742. Dr. Stephen Walsh, involuntary medical auxiliary, granted full pod operation privileges aboard the Inviolate. No override permitted.
They think physiology is the only key. They've never read their own fine print.
That night, under the cell's single light, Walsh traced command hierarchies on the wall with a broken fingernail. He repeated the override codes until they became muscle memory. Every pod command, every access protocol. The Corthans had given him a weapon wrapped in medical protocol. They called it meaningless, a document that now sat in his shuttle's memory banks, signed, sealed, and utterly lethal. Walsh stepped into the Starbase debriefing room. Ambassador Santos sat behind a glass desk, waiting.
Dr. Walsh, I've read the preliminary report. Is it true you turned their stasis pods into a fleet-wide coma?
Every word. And I have the signed certification to prove it.
Santos took the datapad, scanning the document with growing disbelief. The Corthan medical seal was unmistakable.
This is a treaty-grade medical directive. They handed you a legal shield.
The room fell silent as the diplomatic calculus shifted. This wasn't a rescue. It was a precedent. A priority alert flashed on the wall screen. Corthan Admiralty emergency broadcast demanding Walsh's extradition.
They're calling it an act of war, but the document says otherwise.
They'll scream war crimes. Earth can just hold up their own signature.
The certification was now the fulcrum. The galaxy would rewrite its rules on fear, one signature at a time. The Corthan Admiralty chamber blazed with red holos. Admiral Threx rose, each word a deliberate hammer blow.
The human weaponized our medical system. We demand Earth surrender Dr. Walsh within 48 hours, or face the consequences of war.
The ultimatum crashed into the human diplomatic network. Ambassador Santos watched the replay in a silent office.
He followed their protocol. A certified medical officer. This is not a crime. It's a loophole they created. If I hand him over, we prove their arrogance wins. If I refuse, it's political fire. But the law is on our side.
She opened the channel. One hand rested on the certification.
Earth declines extradition. Dr. Walsh acted under Corthan medical doctrine. The attached certification is self-explanatory.
The transmission ended with a single click, the sound of a legal lock engaging. In the Admiralty chamber, Threx stared at the document. The seal was unmistakable. Fury wrestled with the cold fact of legality. The choice was made. The Corthan fleet was frozen, not just in pods, but in a juridical trap of their own making. The Admiralty chamber fell silent. The rejected ultimatum hung in the air, like a half-drawn blade.
They refuse. On what grounds? The human crippled a flagship.
The certification materialized again, every clause stark, every permission irrevocable. Zek's signature burned at the bottom.
This is a medical directive, not a treaty. It was never meant to be a weapon, but the wording is absolute. No override permitted. We built this cage ourselves.
A junior admiral spoke the unthinkable. If they punished Walsh, they'd nullify every Corthan medical directive in the galaxy.
Then we take this to the Galactic Council. Let them see that a human doctor turned our own doctrine into a fleet killer.
A priority channel opened to the Galactic Council. The Corthan seal burned next to the Earth insignia, both awaiting a higher judge.
The Council will see the loophole, but if they rule on the letter, not the spirit, we lose everything.
The Corthan battle fleet remained frozen, but the real war was now in a courtroom, and the first witness was a dead man's signature. The Galactic Council chamber was a crescent of 9 species. Threx's voice boomed through the accusatory holos.
Dr. Walsh is not a doctor. He's a weapon who exploited a medical directive to neutralize a capital ship. This is an act of war.
Ambassador Santos rose, calm, holding a single datapad. She placed the certification at the center of the chamber.
The Corthans drafted this certification. They signed it. They granted Dr. Walsh full pod operation privileges. He acted within its terms.
A neutral counselor leaned forward. The question that would define the case: had the human doctor operated the pods in a manner inconsistent with the certification?
He adjusted seizure regulation settings, exactly as his training specified. The certification never defined intent, only permission.
The calibration log filled the chamber, a perfect record of Walsh following Corthan medical protocols. The Corthan delegation erupted, but the law was mute on their behalf. Threx's claws dug into the table, The council recessed for deliberation. Loophole exposed. The letter of the law had become a blade, the doors sealed. A single counselor rose, and the chamber stilled to silence. Case 8823, Corthan Admiralty versus Dr. Stephen Walsh. This council finds no violation of treaty. The accused acted within granted medical certification. The words hung there, irrevocable. No gasps, no murmurs, only the sudden weight of law.
This council condones butchery. You've turned murder into a paperwork exercise.
His voice cracked. Other Corthan officers rose, but their protests fragmented against the ruling's finality. Ambassador Santos rose. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply nodded.
Earth acknowledges the ruling. We will ensure such certifications are reviewed, but the law is the law.
The Corthan delegation stormed from the chamber. Threx paused at the door, his shadow long and trembling.
Remember this, human. When the next loophole kills your own.
Then he was gone. And the galaxy knew. A doctor had turned a signature into the most elegant weapon ever signed. Walsh pushed through the council's outer doors. Barricades held back a pounding herd of journalists. A lens was thrust forward. The voice cut through the chaos. Dr. Walsh, do you feel like a hero?
I did what I was trained to do. They trained me.
The quote detonated across every feed. In the Earth diplomatic office, Santos watched the first headline scroll. The doctor who used their own rules against them. The galaxy's first legal ghost weapon.
A doctor with a black bag. Now every medic is a potential weapon. They'll never look at us the same way.
On one side of the split screen, Corthan media branded him a terrorist. On the other, a human tabloid. He did what they trained him to do. Walsh paused at the edge of the media zone. His eyes flicked to the black bag, then to the crowd.
No hero, just a doctor who read the fine print.
He turned and walked away. The black bag swung, the only answer he'd ever give. In the days after, the feeds were a cascade. Aliens debated in a dozen languages, in a dozen tones of fear. A species that turns medical training into a planetary threat. We must reclassify their civilians. On a hive world, pragmatists applauded the elegance. They weaponized a signature. Imagine if they weaponized a filing system. On a Corthan broadcast, Admiral Threx stood before a grainy backdrop. His voice was gravel-wrapped in spite.
We will never again underestimate their soft professions. Doctors, engineers, accountants, humans are dangerous because they read.
The screen cut to the Inviolate, still drifting, its crew still frozen. A symbol of the new equation. On Earth, classrooms were briefed on the case. This is why you read every line. The black bag became a teaching tool across the galaxy. Security screenings for human medics tripled. A doctor's bag was now treated like a bomb. The phrase "frozen by signature" entered the galactic lexicon. The weapon was not the pod. It was the permission. And in the silence of the flagship's corridors, the cyan light pulsed, waiting for a court order that would never come. On a human station, a dim bar with a viewport of the Inviolate's frozen hull. Walsh sat alone, the black bag on the stool beside him. A young doctor, barely out of residency, approached with the hesitant step of someone meeting a myth. He asked the question Walsh had been waiting for. Did he ever intend to become a weapon?
They all want a simple answer. Hero or villain. Number. I just wanted them to stop hurting people. They never expected a doctor to read the fine print.
The young doctor stood still, absorbing the weight of it. Not an ideal, but a reality.
Those pods could have killed. I just redirected the outcome.
He finished his drink, leaving a few credits on the counter. The black bag swung into his hand. He walked to the viewport and stared at the frozen flagship he'd never touch again. Walsh became a silhouette, black bag motionless, against the vast frozen hull of the Flagship. The camera pulled back, through the bar, past empty stools, into the station's quiet hum. A passing officer glanced at a news screen. Walsh's face, then the headline, then away. The lens slipped through a viewport, out into the void where the Inviolate hung. Its red hull was a monument to arrogance, its cyan line a signature written in light, and on the audio, a narrator's observation, tying the story's last knot. In the end, the Corthans never saw a weapon, because they never thought to look in a medical bag. Thus ended a war fought with a permission slip. Not a single shot fired. The galaxy rewrote its rules overnight. The black bag became a symbol of human ingenuity, and a warning. Fade to credits. The Inviolate's cyan line pulsed once softly, like a slow heartbeat. Then the screen went dark. From the black, the Inviolate resolved, its crew still frozen, its hull unchanged. The title card materialized over the image, sharp and final. A single human doctor boarded their Flagship. The crew was found frozen. The narrator's voice carried the last weight. They signed the form. He used it. Credits scrolled, letters small against the vast hull, names of those who never fired a shot. The camera drifted along the Inviolate's spine, past sealed pod hatches where the crew slept, through portholes. The glow of stasis pods flickered, a testament to a loophole. The cyan line dimmed at last, the signature fading into the starfield. The screen held for a moment, then faded to black, the credits completing their crawl. The story was over. The precedent remained.